This is a strange story about an encounter with possibly a creature or spirit from when I was about 5 years old. At that time, my older sister and I slept in bunk beds, and every now and then we would swap beds. So on this night, I was in the top bunk, while my sister was on the bottom bunk. It was the middle of the night, and something woke me up. Half asleep, I peered over the side of my bed. At first, there was nothing, but then I heard some rustling coming from the closet across from me. This sound had also woken up my sister, and therefore we both witnessed what happened next. A small black bird shot from the closet and darted under the beds. Freaked out, I jerked back into bed, and in a quiet whisper, I asked my sister if she just saw what I did. She confirmed that she had seen the bird too. It was so strange that, as any kid would, we agreed to call out for our mum. After a short time, my mum came into our room asking what was wrong. When we explained what had just occurred, she bent down and searched under the bunk beds. After looking everywhere, my mum stood up with a confused look and told us that there was nothing there. Somehow, the bird had just vanished. My sister and I were shocked. It had to be there. Both of us saw it. There was nowhere for it to go. The windows were closed and there were no holes under there for it to escape. My mum told us it must have been a dream and to go back to bed. We did as we were told, and I forgot about it for years until I was talking with my mum and sister, and they told me that they both remember that night and the vanishing black bird. It had been an incredibly hot and dry summer that year, and finally the sky had opened up and it had started to rain. Excited, my whole family ran outside to cool down and have some fun. We were relieved to feel the cool change come through, but after about 10 minutes, the advancing lightning storm was above us. After a huge thunderclap, we all ran squealing and laughing inside the house to dry off. All except Mum. While standing on our veranda watching the steam emanate from the hot concrete, she felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise, as if she was being watched. Following this feeling, her gaze shifted to my parked car in the front yard. Just after a deafening thunderclap, she shockingly saw the spirit of our family dog named Gypsy, who had just recently passed away and was buried in the front yard. She was standing in the front seat of my car with her paws on the headrest. Gypsy turned to her with a doggy smile. Mum felt like she was letting her know that she was fine and that she missed us. As soon as she thought to herself, "What the hell?" she disappeared like a mist. My mum walked into the house with a shocked look on her face, and when she told us what happened, I was so surprised, but happy to know she was okay. We'd had her since I was 5 years old, and I missed her a lot. She was always there, and it was strange for her to be gone. She died in 2012, and even years later, I still think of her. Hello all. My story takes place back about half a decade or so. I was serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Y'all sometimes call us Mormons, which is chill with me, I don't really care. Anywho, I spent 2 years of my life in the great state of Alaska, meeting people from all walks of life, performing acts of service, whether that be chopping wood or working at a soup kitchen, and of course, knocking doors trying to talk to people about Jesus. I have plenty of weird and strange experiences on my mission, whether that be the time my companion, the guy I teach and serve with, not a gay thing, and I were in a stairwell in a sketchy neighborhood at night. We both heard the same raspy voice in our left ear say, "No," with no one there. The time I lived on a church on an Indian reservation, where the locals told us to be in by nightfall, and we heard strange things at night. Or even when an old Japanese man told us he could handle the Book of Mormon. We gave to him back to us with a note stuck in the middle that says, "I'm sorry, I can't keep meeting with you gentlemen. Something has come up, and be careful, the others are watching." We went back a week or so later to check up on him, due to him being older and alone. We peeked through his front window to see his home was absolutely bare. No furniture, nothing on the inside, and the man was a pack rat, and his house was a mess. So maybe he was kidnapped by a crazy secret society, I don't know. The full story I'm going to share with you takes place in January of 2016. I lived in Fairbanks, Alaska, about 200 miles or so south from the Arctic Circle. Life was rough at the time the sun came up, only for a couple hours every day. And when it did, it only stayed on the horizon, with it being dark by around 3:30 or 4 every day. And to add sub-zero temperatures and people not exactly being the kindest given the circumstances, being a missionary was hard, with lots of slammed doors and nights eating a cup of noodles by a heater. In the area of Fairbanks, there were about 10 or 12 missionaries serving different areas of the city. And like any organization, there has to be leaders to pass down information. We called these missionaries zone leaders. They gave us trainings, relayed information from our mission leaders, and just did the best to keep order amongst 20 or so 18 to 20-year-olds. One of the duties that these leaders performed was go on exchanges with different sets of missionaries, where you would swap the person you would go out and teach with for the day, earn some pointers, be away from a companion you hate, several awesome things, I guess. At the time, our zone leaders were a very dysfunctional pair. In order to protect their privacy, I guess I'll call them Elder A and Elder B. Male missionaries are addressed as elders. Elder A was a jolly round farm boy, nice as can be, and not a lot going on upstairs, but nothing wrong with that. Elder B was on the service, a nice easygoing athletic guy, but deep turned out the man was a certified sociopath. The man was a cop now, so go figure. There was a lot of problems between the two of them. They clashed and fought all the time, and as you know, contention can breed bad things. On to the events in question. I had gone on exchanges with Elder A and Elder B. I went with jolly Elder A, while the young Patrick Bateman Elder B went with my companion. I was going to be staying with Elder A in his area of town. They lived in what used to be a barn in the middle of the woods, and had been crudely converted into a duplex with the elders living in the upstairs apartments. Let me tell you, this place sucked. The heating would go out in the middle of winter in Alaska, which is awesome, so they had to cover the windows with saran wrap and leave the oven open to heat the place. Not to mention the neighbours below smoked so much weed that if you went to the upstairs apartments for even an hour, your coat would stink of pot for days. So that's where my quarters would be on this sub-zero Arctic night. The day with Elder A was pretty normal, visiting people, teaching, shoveling an old woman's driveway. We then returned to the apartment in the evening. Everything went well until we had to go to bed. When you're on a mission, you have to be within sight and sound of your companion, except, of course, bathroom breaks and showers. So we had to share a room. As I was getting in bed, I noticed that Elder A had deadlocked the bedroom door, as well as put a chain lock on it, which I thought was strange due to us locking the front door of the apartment as well. When I asked him why he locked the door, he said something like, "Oh, I didn't say anything else." The dude was a strange bird, so I thought nothing of it and went to bed. I was rudely awoken several hours later to Elder A loudly moaning in the sleep. Like loud, dude, it was bad. I was quickly distracted by the moans when I noticed that the power was out. The heat was out, and I could see my breath in front of me. The only light in the room was the aurora borealis glowing outside. I suddenly felt a sick, dark feeling, like I was afraid, but I wasn't quite sure why. I suddenly realized that I could hear someone walking around in the kitchen. This wasn't normal, as we were the only ones in the apartment. I thought about getting up and checking it out, but I had this feeling that I needed to stay put in bed. I could hear who or whatever it was moving plates and silverware around and eventually walking around, not sounding like it was doing anything specific, just making noise. Sounded like it was just moving plates from one part of the counter to another. Eventually, it started just walking around in circles. I could hear the footsteps coming closer to the door and then moving away from it. It would do this around 3 times, walking close to the door and then walking away from it. The whole ordeal lasted around 10 minutes. My heart was beating out of my chest. I didn't know what to do, but being the religious person I was, I said a prayer to myself, asking whatever it was to go away. And right when the roster was finished, it stopped. I'm not sure what caused it, but whatever was moving around causing a ruckus didn't want to stick around anymore. I eventually was able to calm down. The power and heat turned on again, and I fell asleep the next morning. I had decided that it must have been a dream, and that in my state of in between awake and sleep, my mind was playing tricks on me. I had been exhausted and stressed out, so my restless mind must have been acting up. So I decided not to share it with anyone. That is, until 2 to 3 weeks later. I was hanging out with another set of missionaries who happened to live right by we were, up late swapping scary stories. I didn't have any good ones to tell, so I decided to tell my story at the zone leader's apartment. As I was telling my story, one of my buddies began to get very pale and quiet. When I finished, he explained that a week or so before I was in the apartment, he had been on exchange with Elder A as well. That night, they had decided to sleep with the door open. My buddy was awoken in the middle of the night, seeing an outline of a man in the doorway, or a shadow man, he wasn't sure. When my buddy asked the shadow man what he was doing there, the figure asked, "I'm looking for Elder B," the sociopathic one, except he used his full name. My buddy said he wasn't sure there, as Elder B was with my buddy's companion. The figure vanished, and from there on out, Elder A and Elder B double-locked the bedroom door every night. You're probably wondering, as I was, why Elder B? Well, the man was always doing sketchy stuff. One time my companion and I had come home one evening to our apartment. Something felt off when we walked in. We walked into the living room to see that on our coffee table there was a pentagram made of salt with a doll I had received for Christmas as a gag gift. In the middle, its eyes darkened out in Sharpie. My companion and I were shocked. We broke the pentagram and blessed our apartment, and then everything felt right. Another weird thing about Elder B, a time-lapse video. A video surfaced of him and a group of people, we didn't know who, wearing cloaks in a room, only lit by candles. We didn't recognize, walking in a trance-like circle around the room. Elder B had gone back home to Arizona when it had surfaced, so no one could question him about it. To add a little fun note to this story, when I had finished my mission, I was telling the story to my father's extended family at our cabin when I got to the part where the power had gone out. The power went out in our cabin, and my little brother got a bloody nose. Probably nothing, but it certainly added to the atmosphere of my retelling of the event. Now, before this event, I certainly believed that there has to be something going on when it comes to the paranormal. And the stories we hear people tell, 99% of them are probably bullshit. Whether mine's in the 99 or 1, it's up to you. Another takeaway was that if these dark spirits are really, and if they do indeed are malevolent and want to cause harm, per the rules of the universe, there has to be opposites in all things. And if there is this so-called dark and evil force, there has to be an opposite, a force of light and good. And that gives me a strange feeling of comfort for some reason. This happened a few years back, and I still don't know what to think of it. I live in northern Wyoming, and my family considered on going to the cabin up in the mountains. I proceeded to persuade my parents on letting me bring a friend with us. They agreed. Thank goodness, too. We picked up my friend. His name is going to be Jason for privacy reasons. When Jason hopped in the pickup truck, we were babbling on what we'd do once we got up there. As we got there around noon, my mom made lunch and kicked us out of the rest of the afternoon. We found sticks and pretending as if we were in some Call of Duty. As the day went on, I showed him the treehouse. As we were sitting up there talking about school and the different things that were going on, Jason looked outward and his body froze. I looked at him. Hey man, you okay? I looked out where he was looking at. Off in the distance, I saw some sort of thing, some creature poking its head out, looking straight at us. My heart started racing. The treehouse was just a platform on 3 trees. It had one way up and one way down. I looked at Jason and shook him to get him out of his haze. He looks at me and starts to say something about the creature. But he turns and sees that it's getting closer. The creature peered out. It was tall, about 8 or 9 feet off the ground it was standing on. I tried to ask, what do we do? My guess, he panicked and went to the opening of the treehouse and jumped. Then proceeded to run to the clearing in front of the cabin. My eyes started to tear up. I was alone with that creature. As I turned, it was halfway between me and where we had first seen it. I scooted my butt towards the edge, still looking at the creature. It seemed to get closer when we were not looking at it. I flipped my body around to get a better hold of the ladder. I looked towards its direction and went for it. Once I got to the ground, I sprinted with all my might. Trying to see where Jason went, I saw him. His eyes got big and he started to scream, "It's right behind you, run!" At that point of time, I was pretty hefty. I guess when you're scared to death, it doesn't matter. I got to Jason. We turn around and see the creature that was peering at us from the tree line. We look up to the sun was going down. So we went back inside for the night. We tried to tell my parents what we saw, but of course, they didn't believe us. What do you guys think it was? My boyfriend's childhood home is old. How old? Nobody knows exactly. It may have been built around the beginning of the 20th century, but it could be older. It's a 3-level house with a huge archway at the door that marks its age. So far, so good. There are 2 stories that I want to tell you. The first one happened when we just started dating. My boyfriend has searched for his room key for quite a while. It appeared to be lost forever. One day, I entered his room and there was the key, laying perfectly placed in the middle of the bed. When he came home from work, I mentioned that I was glad he found the key. He looked at me confused and I pointed at the door where I put the key in. He said he didn't find it. Later, we asked his parents and sister if they placed it there, but they all denied it. To this day, we don't know how it ended up there. The second story happened yesterday. Some details to explain the setting. The building has 2 front doors. The inner front door squeaks remarkably loud if you open it, so everyone knows that someone's coming inside. My boyfriend's mother and I sat at the dinner table. His dad was watching soccer at the TV next to us on the third floor. My boyfriend and his sister were out of the house. Suddenly, my mother-in-law and I heard the front door squeak, then another door-like sound. "Someone must have come in," my mother-in-law said. She went down the first stair and said, "Hello?" No answer. She decided to take a look herself. Not a single soul in sight. At the exact moment she went down to look, my boyfriend opened the door and came in, just to see the two of us confused, asking if we were mocking us. He affirmed that he wasn't inside before to open the squeaky door. As we wondered, they both told me that these kind of things have happened often before. Doors open, things move, and sometimes you hear steps that aren't supposed to be there. They call their ghost Herbert after their uncle that passed away a few years ago, and I guess it's a friendly soul. I've always been a strong paranormal believer and have various other paranormal experiences. For example, visits from my dead father as a toddler, a recurring dream of how the son of my current residence passed away until I learned that's how he passed and never had that dream again. Cutting to the chase, when I was in 8th grade, so a few years ago now, a new being became a visitor in my home. My room is L-shaped. Suddenly, I started seeing a figure walk from the further part of the L to about the middle, which was right at the edge of my desk and before the foot of my bed. The layout of my room is important to this story, I promise. Now, this became a nightly thing for at least 3 months. It would appear by my closet door and walk to the edge of my desk and stop. Every night at around midnight to 1 a.m. To describe the figure, it was all black, a solid form. You couldn't see through it. It was large, it walked on all fours, but if I had to guess, it would be at least 6 foot tall on hind legs. It had very distinct limbs and features while maintaining a blur of sorts. Its elbows and knees were inverted, decently skinny oval head, shape but no face. Its pace was fairly normal, and I never really saw it appear or disappear, simply there and gone. Now, at first, it terrified me, of course. But after a few weeks, I adjusted and it became normal. The thing is, like I said, it came the same time every single night for months after I had gotten into bed. Never mattered if the light was on or off. I couldn't fall asleep before it came, but after it left, I could. My friends assumed sleep paralysis, or some even thought I was schizophrenic. I never really tried to move, honestly, and after a while, I wasn't scared either. Now, I don't believe it was sleep paralysis because at times I did move when it was present, but that comes later. It came and did its path in my bedroom. Eventually, I became too scared to sleep in my room, so my parents let me sleep on the couch in their room for a night or two. The way my house is, I could still see my doorway down the hall. Again, I couldn't sleep, and it was late. I'd never seen it go further than the corner of my desk. Now it peeked out from my doorway into the hall, to about its shoulders. Again, it stopped there. One of the last times I saw it, it actually showed itself at my middle school. I left class to grab something. The halls had 3 sets of staircases, and as I walked, it came out one of the stairwells ahead of me. One night I did some research and recited something I found, pretty much saying I wished to find a place it liked, but it couldn't stay at home. After that, it was over. I've retold this story many times, and though my brain envisions it and I get chills, it hasn't returned, and I hope to God that it doesn't. Here's the part I don't quite understand though. It was there for months, but never once did it actually come closer to me than the foot of my bed. It always appeared as though it was looking for something. almost similar to a dog sniffing the air, looking around, yet it never looked at me. No matter where I saw it, it was near me, but it was kind of like it wanted nothing to do with me personally. Again, never once had it interacted, tried to intimidate, look at, or anything to me or my family. I think that's why I got so comfortable with it. A friend suggested maybe it was protecting me from something. I'd really love to hear ideas on what the figure may have been, or what its objective could have been. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time and cycled the 8 kilometers to school every single morning. Most days, I had a group of my Catholic school buddies riding along, but I preferred the solitary moments pedaling through those quiet roads the most, and it still stands as my best memories of school times. There was a tiny underpass, large enough for one rickshaw at the time, that brought me to school quicker across the army cantonment area in Kirky Pune. Often, as I zipped through the underpass, an aged lady I would spot sitting in the corner just after, a single bag of belongings by her side, brewing some tea in a little utensil set atop a little wood fire. It was the 4th time coming across the lady, watching her little bag of food, that I finally got the courage and heart to stop and talk to her. "Namaste, Aji," I said, Aji being grandmother in the Marathi language. "Do you live here, Aji? I see you sitting here every day as I pass." She looked up with myopic eyes and said, "I live all around this place, and this is where I sit to brew my tea and eat some food. This is my home now, and has been my home ever since I left home." I didn't ask her why she left and knelt next to her, watching the frail and delicate lady, in her pink sari, struggling to open her packet of dal and rice. Without thinking, I took out my lunch from the pack on my cycle, asked her for a plate if she had one, and placed more than half of my tiffin into it. She looked at the food in disbelief and asked what I would eat throughout the day, and I told her that I had friends who were happy to share their food if need be, gave her the 6 rupee coins I had, and bade goodbye as I was getting late for school. And every single day after that, I would look for her at her usual spot, and for sure, there she was, preparing her tea, and after a quick chat and my tiffin on her plate, I would speed off to school before the entry gate shut for assembly. My pocket money of coins I would hand over without fail, never once thinking I would need it to buy some candy or snacks from the school canteen. Though I would often miss bringing on tamarind candy packets on some days. Some days when I had more time, I would chat with her and tell her some stories from school and my playtime, and she in return would hum a song or two as she ate the food. Soon it was school break, and I bade her goodbye for a month or two, and gave her around 200 rupees I had received during one of the festivals from my aunt. I hoped it would suffice for some food and her stock of tea in the weeks I couldn't meet her. She assured me of having shelter and a source of food available, and though uneasy, I bid her a see you soon. I often thought of her in holidays, but playing with friends soon distracted me. I did request a friend to cycle with me to the spot with some fruits and snacks, but she was nowhere to be seen. Soon school set in, and amidst the monsoon, I went through the usual route, but again, she wasn't there, nor was seen for the next 2 weeks. I grew worried and increased my route on the way home, hoping to spot her sitting under a bus shelter or somewhere safer. I even asked about her to the cycle repair shop guy who filled air in the children's tyres, often, and was just a kilometre ahead of Aji's spot. He hadn't spotted her all these days after. Finally, one sun-soaked morning, I found her at the same spot again, making her favourite tea. I stopped with a rush and shouted, "Aji, where have you been all this time? I got food for you daily." She smiled with her broken teeth and bade me a warm hello. Don't worry, Beta. I've been around, but I'm going away soon. I need to go home. Home? I asked. Home to family? Home to family, yes, she smiled. I offered her my tiffin again, and she offered her plate once more. But something in me felt different. I felt a deep sense of loss as I looked at her, maybe wondering if this was the last time I would see her. Once again, I got up and kept the tiffin back in the pack, looked at her, and started cycling to school while waving her a goodbye. School went as usual, but her face kept popping up in my mind for some reason. Once it was time to leave, I stopped at the cycle shop to get my air filled and mentioned to the owner that I had finally met Adji after ages. Anna, met Adji today after so long. Thank goodness she's still around. I was worried she had moved to another place far away. Anna looked at me with wide set eyes. Our Adji, who always sits there, you say? And yes, who else, Anna? I met her today and she was telling me she's finally going back home. I guess to her village. OP, I didn't want to tell you because you were so attached to her, but she died during the monsoon due to her age and the relentless cold weather we had since some time. I looked at him in shock and couldn't believe it. I told him I had given her food just this morning. It can't be. I got astride my cycle and rushed to the spot. There was no sign of the food I had given her, nor any telltale signs of a little wood fire being lit that very morning. I stood there frozen, and the next moment, with an onset of fear, speed cycled all the way back home. I was still a child back then, and the fact that her spirit had bade goodbye hit me a bit differently. I avoided that path for months, but soon started cycling on that route again, mollified. But some years later, when I thought back to that day, I realized what an honor it was to receive her last goodbye. And I still recall her smile and her humming songs whenever I passed by that spot. I started my job as a care assistant in a nursing home in 2019. The home used to be an old orphanage, which explained the noises of children laughing and crying, and also the noises of balls bouncing and little footsteps. There are 4 floors in the nursing home, and each floor and the staff and most residents working on those floors would often see the lady in white or a woman in black. There are multiple stories staff share their own experiences with each other, but this was mine. One particular shift, I started my day with the usual routine, coffee, and made my way to start with the first room. As I was walking into the room, I had seen a woman dressed in a long, black, old-fashioned dress slowly come out of the room next door. I rubbed my eyes as my heart sank, and she was gone. I carried on my usual routine, and the lady I was seeing to at the time said, "That woman has been in here again." I asked that woman she was talking about, knowing full well I had just seen her, and that I was shitting myself. She then went on to tell me that when she comes, it's either me or one of my neighbours that have to go. I was confused, scared, and carried on asking her as many questions about this woman as I could. The lovely lady didn't speak for the rest of my time in her room. So later that day, I had spoken about it with another member of staff who had been there longer. She said when the woman in black is seen by the residents, there's a death within a week or 2. At first I was like, am I going to fucking die? I've seen her. She said no, she feeds off the vulnerable and the weak. This woman makes herself known. She shows herself as and when she wants. A good few days went by, and I was in the lift going to the very top floor, which was where the children were most heard. The lady in white was mainly seen up here. I believe she protects the children still. As the lift stopped at the top floor and the doors began to open, I heard what I could only describe as a woman whispering very angrily down my ear. It was fast, strong, and quick. The hairs on my neck stood still. I could hear my own heartbeat hitting my chest. I just knew it was her. I remember being in the dining area on the top floor. It was super quiet towards the end of our shift, as most of the residents were independent on that particular unit. So the doors would be closed, and you had some time to make a coffee and do paperwork without anyone really needing help or assistance. I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, and I heard what I could only describe as furniture being moved around by a rugby team, but it was coming from the attic. No one had access to the attic, only maintenance, but most night staff would hear running up and down, balls bouncing, children whispering and playing. I unplugged the kettle and ran towards the window of the dining room, which was facing the front of the building. I could see an ambulance was turning into the entrance of the building. All the noise had now stopped. I wondered who the ambulance could have been for, as no one that I knew of was poorly at the time. It's time to clock out of my shift, and I asked our senior member of staff who needed the ambulance. The lovely lady who I had seen a few days before when I saw the woman in black had passed away unexpectedly. I left work thinking about what had happened and thought over and over in my head that my lovely old lady knew it would be her or one of her neighbours, as she called the other residents. My next shift was on the top floor again. I began doing a walk around check, which is routine. As I checked up on one of our gentlemen who was fairly new to the building and still settling in, he shouted me into his room and told me if I could ask the lady in the white gown to stop standing outside of his bedroom with her children. Again, my heart dropped, and my face surely said it all. I asked him what time she had been stood outside his bedroom. He said he fell asleep at around 10 p.m. in his armchair and woke feeling cold and uncomfortable. He said he glanced at the door to see a lady in a white gown with some small children around her just staring into the bedroom for a couple of minutes until they turned to the right side of the corridor. The right side of the corridor on that unit leads to the maintenance door that goes up to the attic. I didn't ask what time this was, and he told me it was 2:45 a.m. Anyways, so after having a mental breakdown and walking away from this bedroom, I carried on with all routine checks, and there was me and another staff member on the unit that day. After lunch, I was stood outside the dining room talking to the girl I was working with, and she said, "Can you hear that?" I said, "What?" She said, "That woman crying." We stopped speaking, and I listened very carefully, and I could hear a woman crying. A woman crying as if she was heartbroken, like sobbing, then within a split-second silence. I began to tell my work friend what had been going on, and what the gentleman had also told me this morning. She was freaked out to say the least. After a while, she took her break, and I was cracking down on some paperwork in the office. Had the radio on, but only quietly. I noticed my battery life was draining so much. As I was writing, the radio began to switch stations rapidly, and the volume was going up and down, up and down. The same cry was coming through the radio that we had heard just before. I literally dropped my pen, left my phone, and dashed from the office, and just as I had got out of there, the gentleman in 417 shouted to me, "I told you to tell her." So, skip to a couple months down the line. The gentleman in 417, his health started to decline. So unfortunately, he wasn't very mobile and wasn't very independent, so he was soon to leave the unit to go down onto the bottom unit, which is the basement's converted. He often mentioned the lady in white and her children sometimes. He told me that she's been again. And what I had noticed is he would say this sort of stuff the night before or on the night of someone sadly passing in the building, which I obviously wouldn't find out until the day before when I'd come on shift. So did the lady in white gather the children together, as she knew the woman in black would be around for someone passing? I've had 2 years of thinking this shit through and trying to make sense of it all. 417 ended up moving down to the very bottom units, eventually, and when staff clock out and leave the back way, they pass his room. I was leaving work and I decided to go back way this particular night. As I clocked off at 8, and I shouted good night and waved to him. He shouted my name, so I said yes. Is there anything I can do for you? He said, how come you didn't tell me? There's a woman in black down here. My heart. After knowing another resident had seen the woman in black, my heart sank even more. A constant anxiety I had returning to the building every next shift I had. Being on each unit, I learned that every unit had its own different entities. Shadow people walking along the wall, dark figures changing their appearances, the smell, the change in energy, the huge dark mists in residents' room that would stay in one spot. Not everyone saw as much as me, apart from the man under the bed. Me and another girl were doubling up together, not so long ago, and starting at one end of the corridor, the lady who we were seeing too was very quiet and barely spoke. We got to her room and noticed she was hissing, spitting and shouting, "Get out of here! Get from out behind the curtains!" Yes, the curtains were still closed as it was around 8 a.m. It didn't look as if anything was behind them, but we reassured her as such as possible. By this point, she was very distressed. The girl I was working with was concerned. She was hallucinating, until the lady told us he was under the bed. We had pulled the bed out as one of us works on each side of the bed, as the lady is cared for in bed. After trying to take her mind off things by changing conversation and talking about things she once enjoyed, this quiet little old lady was having none of it. She kept reminding us that he is under the bed. So after almost finishing up in her room, we pushed the bed back and I began to collect the clothes for laundry. Within seconds of me picking the clothes up and being ready to go on to the next room, the other girl who I was working with was pushed backwards onto the floor in full force and was kicking thin air. I panicked and asked her what had happened, and she screamed, "Something is actually under the fucking bed." She stood up with tears running down her face with fear and repeated herself. Once I managed to calm her down and asked her what had happened and if she'd seen anything, she told me she felt two large hands push into her chest with so much force, and when she hit the floor, she could feel someone standing over her. She said she couldn't see anything, but she knew something was there. After having a lot of scary encounters and experiences within the home, I decided to ask the maintenance man, Len, who had been working at the home for some time. I told him what I had seen and what's happened since me working there. I asked him firstly what he thought about the woman in black. He began to laugh. He said, "So I take it you've seen her too?" He went on to tell me that the lady in white indeed does protect the children up on the top unit. He told me the children love to play until it's time to hide. He said the little girl, Mary, talks to him all the time, and even follows him, and even watches him do his jobs around the home. He said no one really talks to him while he's working, but Mary and the other children definitely keep him company. I asked him if the sounds of balls bouncing would be from the children playing, and he said, "Of course, I'm the one who brought them the ball." I didn't really know what to think or say. I was shocked, but also it was so sweet at the same time. Len told me the woman in black is indeed very evil and has workers within the home. She has taunted him many times. She knows how much I love the children, he stated. Although they aren't here in the physical world, I have no wife and children. Me and the spirits both need friends. Len began to tell me his experiences with the lady in white and his experience with the woman in black and the other dark entities. I was so interested and wanted to hear everything. I asked Len if he could start from the beginning. So he did. The first dark encounter, as Len called it, He had been left some notes from the staff over the weekend about lights flickering and switching on and off. The same problem was happening on every other unit, barring the top floor. Len began looking into this straight away and started on the middle floor. He started in room 313 and wanted to make his way through the home onto the other units. Len said he walked into 313 and saw all the lights were on. He flipped the switches. Everything was fine. No tripping, no flickering. He said he waited around a couple of minutes to see if he could see any other issues. Absolutely nothing. Len turned his back and began to head for the door. He said he automatically could feel as if he was being watched. But not being watched from behind, but as if someone was stood at the doorway blocking his way. Len stood still. He remembers the horrific smell that had come over the room within seconds. It smelt like I was in the middle of an abandoned slaughterhouse. Len stood still and asked if there was anything there with him. He expressed how he now felt there were hundreds of eyes on him, and that he began to feel physically sick. Len ran out of 313 and never told anyone about it, until he met me. If there's one room I'm scared of, it's 313. I asked Len about his first time seeing the lady in white. Len began to smile and said, "After I ran from room 313. He said she comforted him at the perfect time. He told me after a while, once he began to feel better, he sat on the fire exit stairs outside of the top unit door, and he saw a woman in a lovely white gown coming up the stairs. He said he stood up for her to pass, and before he knew it, she was stood in front of him, and he was just stood in front of her. Her smile brightened my mood suddenly. I felt better. Len moved out of the way to let the lady pass, and he noticed she was rather floating than walking, and she disappeared through the door. And all of a sudden, I knew she wasn't here in the physical world, but I was no longer afraid. As he looked through the glass of the door, the lady in white passed through. He said there were like 5 little children beside her. And that's how he met little Mary. Len and I spoke many times about his experiences. The one he enjoyed speaking of most was how he met Mary. After first seeing the lady in white and the children Len was no longer afraid of, the home and the darkness that lies within it, he quoted, "In the darkest of places, the light will always find you." Len had noticed his tools would go missing while he was working on jobs, and then would return. He began slowly to talk to the spirits of the children, as he knew it would be them. He said he had a warm feeling and could feel them when he couldn't see them. Until he first saw Mary, he said he was sat in his office on the bottom unit. It was a normal day. Len said the usual routine. My office door is always open while I'm in there. From the corner of my eye, I could see a little person stood in the doorway. I turned my head, and there was Mary, in her blue dress. She smiled at me and waved. I smiled back and asked her what she was doing down here. She said she was running and hiding from the other children. I told her my name, and she told me hers. I then said to Mary that she can hide in the office, but only when the door is open. The visits from Mary became more frequent, he said. I began to know her better and started to bring in old books from home into my office. I noticed she would take pencils from my office, so I knew I had to think of something better than books. That's when I bought the ball, he said whilst laughing. I know everyone thinks I'm a crazy old man in here, but I don't care. I can see a whole different world to many others. A world much more beautiful. I found out Len moved his books and toys he had brought for the children into the attic, as it's empty and very big. And that's where they are most of the time. Len didn't want anyone moving or touching what's for the children.